Greetings and welcome everyone. So wonderful to have a full loft of warm souls, a full Zoom room full of warm souls, starting off the new year with both feet. That is my motto for the new year, as I've got up on the whiteboard here. Enter 2023 with both feet. ... on the ground rather than in your mouth, as could be the case. And that verse that I opened with, for the sake of the circle, the glory of the golden ring, oneness in mind, actions aligned. That was something of a mantra that was being used during the fall term of the Vibration as Foundation Masters in Resonance program that I inaugurated this past fall. I was very delighted to dive into some deep, rich material with a beautiful group of people. So much so that we've decided to continue into a second term this for the winter here. So tonight, there's a combination of things happening. First of all, it is the first night of the second term of the people in the class. Put your hands up for people that are involved in the Vibration as Foundation program. So that's one thing that's happening tonight. I thought I'd kind of combine things to make it more interesting. And the other thing that's happening tonight is an open to the public spiritual science loft talk, which I'm getting back into since the pandemic kind of slowed that down a bit, but have started that up again this year. So tonight is Spiritual Science Loft Talk with the title Ancient Egypt Arising in Your Arising as It Must. Ancient Egypt Arising in Your Arising as It Must. And this is to begin a series of talks on the subject, on ancient Egyptian energy science, which I'm going to be doing once a month for February, March, April, and May, on Thursday nights, not Tuesday nights. This is just the one Tuesday, but that's the class night for the class that's running, which is to be a prelude for an esoteric expedition to Egypt, which I am planning to be going on next September, and I've actually put down the deposit. Yay! It's confirmed. I'm going on this esoteric expedition to Egypt, which I've had my eye on for a few years and wasn't getting the green light to go, but now getting the green light to go, and understanding why things are aligned. So tonight is also actually the launch as well of a GoFundMe campaign to put Jesse in a pyramid. The Put Jesse in a Pyramid Fund. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. I'd like to start off with a riddle. The riddle of the Sphinx. The Sphinx is a creature told in stories from Egyptian times and Greek, Roman times, of how travelers on the road to Thebes would encounter this fearsome character, the Sphinx. And on this road to Thebes, they had to answer the riddle, otherwise they would not be able to pass. Rather than being able to pass to Thebes, they would be strangled to death, which is where the Sphinx got its name, through the sphincter hold it would have on its victims to destroy them for failing to answer the riddle of the Sphinx. Let us see if you can answer it this evening. The Sphinx would ask, what is it that goes on 4 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 in the evening. What is it that goes on 4 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 in the evening? Someone's got their hand up there. Okay, Quentin.
Well, I worry about being choked out, but is it man?
Worry about being sphinctered out. Is it the human?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to offer an answer to the riddle of the Sphinx?
It was man. It was man. He crawls in the morning, crawls during his birth.
Yeah.
Walks on 2 legs during his middle age, and then uses a cane in his old age.
Let's give it up for Bruce. He's not strangled tonight. Yes, and Quentin did say that. The human. The human. Johnny had it kind of in reverse, because in the morning, yes, the baby crawls on all 4. In the morning of life. In the daytime of life, walks upright, vertical, 2 legs. And then in the evening, with the cane, making for 3 legs. Because the answer is the human itself. In this next riddle, the question is, what is the purpose of the human? What is the purpose of the human? What is this purpose of being born into existence, crawling on 4, coming up into 2, into verticality, and then bowing down and collapsing back to the horizontal in old age? What's behind all of that? Is there anything behind all of that? How about if we boil it down to one word? The purpose of the human being is consciousness. Consciousness. That this is the purpose of all life, from the arising of rocks, plants, animals, for this human to stand up in verticality into the light of the sun, the outer light, as symbolic of an inner light, of consciousness. That we are to become conscious and participate with consciousness. So another riddle. One question always leads to another answer, which leads to another question. What is consciousness? What is consciousness? Well, if we look at the word etymologically, con and shus, con means with, and shus means knowing. To be with knowing is to be conscious. It's the same root as the word science. Science is to know, with knowing, to live with knowing, which was the words over the entrance to the oracle in Delphi. Know thyself. Know thyself. And to know thyself means that you are self-conscious. You have consciousness of yourself as a self, which means that you know that you know. To be conscious is not like just an animal that has knowing and experience and memory, but this thing that the human has a capacity for is to know that it knows. And when I did my spiritual warrior training back in my 20s, did a 4-year full-time spiritual warrior training, one of the teachers used to drill that into us, that spiritually we have to grow up so that we know that we know that we know. You know that you know that you know. And what's forgotten though in this Oracle of Delphi, not only did it say know thyself, but also somewhere in there, maybe in brackets underneath, it said, and you will know the universe. Know thyself, and you will know the universe. It's not just about knowing yourself and knowing that you know, But the fact that the human being is a portal to knowing everything. Through ourselves, we can come to knowing everything. There's no limits in this knowing. That we as a microcosm, through a knowing of ourselves as a microcosm, we can come to know the fullness of the macrocosm. And that's why, for those that are in this class that's starting the second term tonight, the Vibrationist Foundation, this term goes by the title, Befriending the Field of Cosmic Intelligence. Befriending the Field of Cosmic Intelligence. I really wanted to land on a title that has a tone of knowing not just knowledge, not just facts. Facts. You get fact up. But to have a living relationship, to befriend the cosmic intelligence. And we're not just talking about, the quantum field. People talk about the quantum field and quantum possibility. No, we're talking about a personal relationship, a personal connection to the living universe, befriending the field of cosmic intelligence. So when it comes to this thing of consciousness, just to riff on that a bit more, what is consciousness? That consciousness is something that wants to express itself. That it doesn't just stay in a static state, but that consciousness, the consciousness of the cosmos or the cosmic consciousness, is in a state of expressing itself, coming into manifestation. And we see that. That's what we're seeing around us, is the expression of the cosmic intelligence. And you see that in your own life where you have something in mind, it's invisible, it's not seen, it's not tangible, it's not manifest. You just have it held within you. But then you bring that idea out through words that express it or some sort of physical manifestation. You make it visible. So in a way, all physical manifestation is an expression of consciousness that wants to roll out in expressing itself. But to turn a little corner here, we have to acknowledge what Graham Hancock refers to as the war on consciousness. I want to put that into the flow here. That consciousness expressing itself is not just a cakewalk, because there are oppositional forces, there are oppositional, adversarial forces that really oppose consciousness and the expression of consciousness. And there is a war on consciousness. And Graham Hancock pointed to this in things like the war on drugs that started back in the 1980s, or really even before that, the 1960s, when everything became regulated and illegal. That this war on drugs was part of a war on consciousness, just one expression of this war on consciousness. But that's why we have to befriend the field of cosmic intelligence, so that we can counterattack in a way. We can be into positive proactivism in allowing the cosmic intelligence, which is invisible and unexpressed, to become expressed through us. And in this doing, let's riff on this a little bit more about how this coming in to manifestation is literally a coming in. It's an involution. But all of evolution that we witness is really an involution of the cosmic intelligence. Evolution is an involution. We see that in the fossil record. fossil record shows this expression of cosmic intelligence involuting and evolving. We see it in all the inventions on Earth, inventions, from the discovery of fire right through to the inventions of all the tools, all the things we have now is a coming in. Invention and ingenuity. The word invent literally means to breathe in. Something is breathed in to manifestation. And ingenuity has the word gene in it. Ingenuity is about a birthing. Something is birthed into existence. And of course, the word existence is the opposite. It means something's coming out into a stand. Existence means out into a stand. So invention and existence are two sides of the same coin. So the question before us, if we're going to support this expression of cosmic consciousness into manifestation, and we're going to step up in this war on consciousness, how can we do this better? How can we bring it in better? Because I learned from an enlightened medical doctor that really most physical and mental illnesses are really an incarnation issue. Incarnation issue. Most physical and mental illnesses are an incarnation issue. That things are not well incarnated. They're not well embodied. Right through to autism. Autism is largely an incarnation issue, that the being cannot incarnate well into the body. I see a naturopath shaking his head in agreement there. Even depression. I would go as far as to say a lot of depression is oppression, spiritual oppression, where consciousness is being oppressed, suppressed. Things are being suppressed, repressed, oppressed, and it leads to depression, which is the #2 health concern on the planet now, according to the WHO. Anything you can do to uplift yourself, to enhance yourself, is going to enhance the capacity for consciousness, to be that vehicle for consciousness. Yeah, this question of how to bring it in more, and you're speaking really through the body, you're speaking in bodily terms, the heart and our whole constitution. And I want to talk a little bit about the ancient antennas through time. Antennas through time that were used for tuning in. And I'm actually going to share a screen here for a moment. Looking at, for example, the mounds made by the mound builders. This is some mounds, a mound down in Ohio, where they would collect bones, they would collect seashells, bones from animals, from humans, and they'd mass them together because they would amplify power spots. They would become power spots that would attract beneficial frequencies and energies and repel detrimental things. So this building up to tune in. Same with the dolmens. These are similar to like at Stonehenge, where vertical rocks were stood up, and then sometimes a beam over top, creating a particular quality of space for tuning in. Often initiates would go and sit in places like that because the amplification of energies there would amplify their own field. Another dolmen, a standing stone or a menhir, acting as an antenna to tune in, to tune up, to allow the consciousness to come down into Earth. There's an obelisk from Egypt. That might even be the one in Central Park, because they got moved to different places around the Earth. These beehive-like edifices, concentrating energies. There's one in Afghanistan, the minaret. Somewhere in Asia. I love these pagodas of Japan. This levity, but it allows something to land in the space within. Here's Chartres Cathedral with its spires aspiring towards the cosmos. By the way, where does the cosmos begin? Anybody figure that out? No, in terms of your relationship to the cosmos, outer space.
Myself?
Yeah.
Myself.
Right here, right there. It's not like way out there. You know, we see pictures of outer space and it's like, oh, it's so far. It's so big. It's like, no, it's right there. Our connection to the cosmos begins right there, as we were doing in the meditation, awakening these centers above the head and creating this triangular edifice in our energetic structure to allow a quality of energy and consciousness to land within us. And of course, the Great Giza Pyramid, which we're going to come around to in a moment here tonight, but I want to take a moment to look at one of the interesting aspects of the Great Giza Pyramid, which I think is the only pyramid in the world constructed like that. Can you see the indent on the side? This was discovered not until the 1940s, when some Air Force pilot was flying over and saw with the shadows that, oh my gosh, there's actually an indentation down the side of the pyramid. Matter of fact, it's on all four sides. Unbelievable. So it's not actually a four-sided pyramid, but it is an eight-sided pyramid. That indentation is half of a degree, which may not seem like much, but on that large a surface is quite significant. That half a degree makes so that the sides come into this indentation. What in the world were these Egyptians up to? Like, how did they manage to do that? Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. But the thing I want to talk about with these antennas is that they were a way to allow more incarnation of cosmic intelligence into the earth, to bring about a greater embodiment of higher consciousness. And that with these spires, there's a sense of vortexing that takes place. The title of tonight's talk is Ancient Egypt Arising in Your Arising as It Must. Because the mystery wisdom of the Egyptian time must arise again in our knowledge, in our application of technology, if we're going to have things in balance, if we're going to actually use the new technologies in a way that's not going to kill us, but when complemented by the ancient technologies will be in balance and allow us to evolve, involve in a healthy way. And as Dr. Kareem, my teacher of biogeometry, says, back to a future for mankind. He's an Egyptian, Dr. Karim is an Egyptian who started the biogeometry energy science, and of which I've done the advanced training, and speaks of how we really need to bring that ancient wisdom into the present time. And so what do? We don't need to necessarily go and build pyramids. It's to recognize that now we are the new pyramid. We are the new #1 wonder of the world, just as the Great Giza Pyramid was the #1 wonder of the world. But we now can be like that pyramid, vortexing energy, which is what I spoke about in the talk I did back in November when I spoke of how the heart is not a pump. The heart is a vortexer. The heart is a spiralizer of energy. Let's take a moment here to actually have a little bit of fun with some paper. If you haven't got a notebook, grab a couple of pieces of paper. I've got paper and folders there, and there's pencils and pencil crayons, and start drawing spirals. It's not all about head knowledge. We need to connect to the sacred geometry of life. Spirals are very exciting. You can draw them in many different ways. See what different ways you can draw them. You can draw it from the center out to the periphery. You can draw it from the periphery back to the center. Draw clockwise, counterclockwise. Feel how that draws you in to the center, or perhaps a sense of expanding outward. As I said, these antennas in time were about landing this fundamental gesture of life, which is not just about a shape, but bringing in a capacity for consciousness. These mounds, these obelisks, pyramids, landing vortex energy. Land that vortex energy in yourself. Feel that effect upon your energy field. And while you're doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Great Giza Pyramid, which for centuries was the tallest building in the world. For centuries, it was the tallest building in the world until the 1300s, when in Britain they built the Lincoln Cathedral, which was a little bit taller until it got knocked over by a storm. But the Great Giza Pyramid had been the largest, tallest building. Actually, it wasn't the largest. There is a pyramid in Mexico that's actually wider. Pyramid in Mexico that is as wide as 9 Olympic pools. Another riddle. What is a pyramid?
Fire in the middle. It's an energy vortex.
Energy vortex. Fire in the middle. Pyramid. As we said, it's an antenna. And the Great Giza Pyramid is a pinnacle of perfection in that it is a multifaceted, multidimensional edifice. Multifaceted, multidimensional. Some of the features of it are even multi-purposed. Some of the features were initially used for the construction of it. And then once the construction was completed, those features were repurposed for initiation ceremonies, with the intent that what goes on in the pyramid would assist in the consciousness of the cosmos to come into embodiment. This is why I say it is multidimensional, because it's not just a physical building. It's not just a physical body. But when it was completed and up and running, it also held a life body. It had an etheric body. And I'm going to get into it. I'm just planting some seeds. As I said, I'm going to be doing this as a monthly talk in February, March, April, and May, and unpack some of these seeds. But here's a little bit of a seed idea, is that Great Giza Pyramid not only had a physical body, it had a life body because of its connection to the Nile and the forces of the earth, the telluric forces of the earth. But because of its connection to the cosmic forces, the starry realm, it also had an astral body, which you also have. You have a physical body, you have a life body, and you have an astral body. And what are the purposes of having these bodies, these sheaths, these koshas, as they're called in the Vedic tradition? Depends on what system you're looking at. But regardless of the number of bodies, the purpose was, again, to house consciousness. So the Great Giza Pyramid, as a pinnacle of perfection, got so that it was basically a living being, or at least whoever was being initiated in the Great Giza Pyramid was made more alive, more human, more conscious, where they would know that they know that they know that they know. So this is why there's so much mathematical exactness and scientific precision seen in the construction of the Great Giza Pyramid. So much mathematical exactness that really functioning on the same level as a high-powered computer. A computer processes information. Well, what does the Great Giza Pyramid do? It processes information. It's processing energies. It's multidimensional. There's a lot going on there. So it's like a high-powered computer. And those indents that I referred to earlier on the 4 sides, making it an 8-side pyramid, completely unique in that regard. Why? Why would they go to the trouble of making it so perfect where it's like a fraction of a degree indented on the 4 sides? Well, for one thing, that would enhance the vortex energy, the going in, the going out, the going in, the going out. The effect, the polarity of in and out, in and out, and in and out would heighten the spin of the vortex within and around this edifice. And of course, with the heightening of the vortex energy, it would be more powerful at deflecting detrimental energies, and inflecting beneficial energies. So in other words, bad things out, good things in. Such a high level of precision around that. And it's important, these indents, so much so that when Dr. Kareem's assistant came here, she visited here and came to the loft. She had in her purse a little grinder thing, and she went around to my pyramids, like the salt pyramid, and I've got a marble pyramid over there, and she would grind these little indents on the 4 sides to enhance the pyramid power. But not only that, if that's not enough, they constructed this tallest building in the world with these indents down to a fraction of a degree perfection, that the proportions of the Great Giza Pyramid are such that they solve and embody the mathematical enigma of the squaring of the circle. Anybody heard of the squaring of the circle?
Yeah.
Vitruvian Man.
The Vitruvian Man is in that ballpark. Considered a mathematical enigma where you can't actually figure out mathematically how to do that. And it's very difficult to do with a straight edge and a compass. To square the circle means that you create a square and an overlaid circle where they have the same area space. And the pyramid did that exactly. So that the height of the pyramid from its peak straight down to its base is the radius of a circle. Okay, from the peak down to the base is the radius of a circle. So it's half a diameter of a circle that would fit squaring the circle of the base of the pyramid, the perimeters. How did they even know about that? Let alone managing to do it exactly, squaring the circle. And why would that be important anyways? Well, to have the exact same area space of a square and a circle really takes us into the mysteries of sacred geometry, where going back through the post-Atlantean epochs, you know, back to the Vedic tradition with the Sri Yantra and you look at the Persian use of patterns, and you look at, you know, the Egyptian work to figure out, to look symbolically at the square and the circle, the square representing Earth. The square represents Earth. That's, you know, the alchemical symbolism. And the circle representing the cosmos. So we're back again to this thing about the embodiment of the cosmic consciousness into the earth, which is what the intent has been of these antennas through time, right to this pinnacle of perfection in the Great Giza Pyramid. The square and the circle fitting exactly together to embody cosmic consciousness into an incarnated form. I'm going to answer that, but first going to give you another drawing exercise. Start drawing some squares. We'll come to that, Masha. But I want to give you an experience of it as well, and not just an intellectual one. On your paper, draw some squares, different sizes. See how perfect you can make the square. A square is a square. It's not a rectangle, it's a square. You're drawing it freehand. You're not, no rulers. No, you gotta eyeball it.
Well, I gotta try to figure out how the Egyptians did it.
That's the next riddle. How did the Egyptians do it? Okay, after you've drawn some squares, draw some circles. Get a feel of the circle. And then try squaring the circle yourself. See what that looks like. What would it look like to have a circle sitting on top of a square where they cover this, they have the same volume? Would you put the circle in the square? Would you put the square in the circle? Okay, so you've got you've got two squares there.
Yeah, so there's a circle and the square inscribed and the square around it. And the square in between them.
Okay, so you're saying the middle square.
The middle square. And I'm thinking that it would be closer to the big circle just because the area of a circle will increase in like as a Well, actually, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. I know that it's somewhere in between.
Well,
That's
yes,
all I can say.
it's somewhere in between. That's very good. The Kobashi you did an interesting thing. You drew a circle, and then you drew a square inside the circle, and then you drew a square that was outside of the circle, and then you drew one in the middle.
Nice.
That's a great way to approach it. That, in fact, is a close approximation of what the squaring of the circle would look like. Right? For the area of the square and the area of the circle to be identical, it's going to look something like that. The Earth containing the cosmos. Perfect fit. And that's what the Egyptians did in the construction of the Great Giza Pyramid. They weren't looking for a big wide base like the one in Mexico that's 9 Olympic swimming pools wide. They wanted something that was balanced between geometry, the measure of the Earth, and the cosmic intelligence. So the height of the pyramid, going straight down from the capstone to the base and the center, is the radius of a circle that, if it was turned on its side, would be a squaring of the circle of the base, the perimeter of the pyramid. But they did it on a 3-dimensional level, not just 2-dimensional. That's what made it a trick. The radius, the line from the peak of the pyramid going straight down to the base is the length of that would be the radius of a circle that would fit into a square that's made by the perimeter of the base. How did they do that? Modern science, Egyptology, they just shrug their shoulders. They don't know how it was done. They don't know how it's done because it's not in their background training to understand how the Egyptians thought, how the Egyptians functioned. But I know how it was done because I have a background in that. I have a background of over 30 years studying initiation science and biogeometry. The answer is very simple, but it's not necessarily easy. It's this. They worked with pendulums that allowed them to tune in to subtle energies, to tune in to the earth grid, to tune in to ley lines, to tune in to points in space. We're talking about capacities that go beyond modern technology, machines, man-made stuff. They were working with the highest device of all, the human being. Working with pendulums, which apparently if you go to the Cairo Museum, I haven't been there, but I'm certainly looking forward to going there next fall. They have banks of these that just are described as objects for ritual use. That's all that they can think that they are. They're just like anomalies. They're just tools for superstitious people, which is why, we're really in a war on consciousness now to bring back an understanding of what the Egyptians were about, how they function, where their consciousness was at, and to embrace that and embody that and incarnate that along with what we've evolved to now in the 5th post-Atlantean epoch, which is to mirror the 3rd post-Atlantean epoch, because the spiraling of time, it's coming around to the point where we're in alignment with the Egyptian wisdom, but we need to bring it to a higher octave. Just to finish off what I was saying is, how did the Egyptians do it? It was 2 things. Working with energetic tools like this. The other thing was they were befriending the field of cosmic intelligence. They were befriending it. They were connecting to it as a living guide to their lives. And that's why I love the title of this second term for those of you in the class, Befriending the Field of Cosmic Intelligence. We have to get back to that living connection with the guidance system of humanity. And partly what allowed them to rise up to that pinnacle and to last so long as a civilization that went on for millennia was because of the initiations that took place in the Great Giza Pyramid and in the temples. That they were very much focused on initiating their leadership. That their pharaohs and their kings had to be brought through the initiation ceremonies. They weren't like what we do with leadership now. You just kind of get voted in through a democratic system, and it doesn't really matter so much about, you know, where you are spiritually and how connected you are and whatnot. No. Back then, they were very much, they were fierce about it, that their leadership had to go through initiations. And so in the Great Giza Pyramid, you know, part of the war on consciousness is the narrative that's going on right now and the suppression of esoteric knowledge and the portrayal of the Great Giza Pyramid as a tomb for a king and a queen. And everything's being mislabeled over there. This is the king's chamber, the queen's chamber. This is called the Great Step. This is called a relieving chamber above. It's all mislabeled. And you have to step back and wonder why. And, you know, this has drawn me in a great interest to really understand what this Great Giza Pyramid's all about. I've been working on this for 5 or 6 years now to get to the bottom of it. And the further I go down the rabbit hole, it's not just about understanding what it is, it's coming face to face with dark forces. Anti-consciousness forces that want to control the narrative. They want to control a world heritage that we all really have a right to know and a right to connect to, that is being controlled and twisted by what ultimately is a tyrannical regime. And so this is really changing the journey for me, where at first I thought, oh, this is just fun reading. And, you know, you can see all sorts of YouTube videos and books on Egyptian mysteries. But if you really are serious about this, you realize that you are involved in a war on consciousness, that you need to understand what was going on in the ancient Egyptian times, as well as other Egyptian times, that the people were not just superstitious and godmongers and into mummifying their cats and stuff like that, but were took their spiritual life very, very seriously. And I'll be unpacking this more over these next talks that I'll be doing, which will culminate in hopefully me going to Egypt on a research and writing expedition, and culminating in writing up, possibly in book form, my own insights based on my own background understanding of what was going on there. Because to give you another little seed teaser, what was the secret to the design behind the Great Giza Pyramid? What was the template design behind it? I'll give you a hint. There's something there, but to make it even simpler, I'll give you a hint. It's the same answer to the riddle of the Sphinx. which was man. That behind the design of the Great Giza Pyramid was the human itself. That's the template design to its structure, so that those going through initiation in it would actually become more human. It's not a tomb. That incredible edifice was not built as a tomb. It was built as a womb where people would be born again through high initiation processes, which I'll go into more of a description in the talks ahead. And the word pyramid, I heard some of you say it before, pyramid, really refers to the fire in the middle. And that central chamber where the sarcophagus is, not to house a dead pharaoh, but to initiate living leadership of Egypt, was a place where fire, spiritual fire, cosmic fire could land in the initiates and to electrify their cosmic consciousness, their ability to think, in other words, which is another thing I hit upon. Well, if you're at the talk I gave in November, I hit on how the heart is not a pump. The heart is a spiralizer to connect to the fire of cosmic consciousness. And we don't think with our brains. Matter of fact, we do more thinking with our heart. And that's why I pulled out this book from Rudolf Steiner, Heart Thinking. And if there's anything the world needs now, is true heart thinking. A higher capacity of heart thinking. So when you have controlling tyrannical forces controlling Egypt right now, which is a legacy that we all have a part of, telling us it's a tomb, and they tell the guides there that they can't say anything else other than the accepted narrative that it's a tomb, and this gets hammered over and over again. Just because something's repeated over and over again doesn't mean it's any truer. It's just propounding a lie as part of a disinformation campaign that's really beyond humans. It's dark forces upon the earth that are engaging in a war in consciousness. So ancient Egypt arising and your arising. And the more I think about taking this trip to Egypt next fall, I realize in a way it's a counterattack to what's happening on the planet just in general. The disinformation, the controlling of narratives, the controlling of thoughts, the dumbing down spiritually of humanity, suppressing, oppressing, creating rise and depression. So I want to finish off by thanking you all for coming here and calling upon support. I've been doing this for over 10 years, opening my home and running classes, talks, groups, sound circles, and whatnot. I'm going to battle now, and it's not with a sword. As they said, Shakespeare said, the pen is mightier than the sword. So my battle is the hopes to go on this expedition in the fall to Egypt and come back with a book, which working title I have right now is Lessons from the Great Living Pyramid and Why We Need to Know Them. And in a way, it's a bit of me going home as well. I've not been to Egypt in this incarnation, but I did have an incarnation in Egypt that I know of, and probably many of you also had an incarnation. in Egypt. And it can be helpful to go and visit a land where you incarnated. It helps to unlock some of what's in your DNA, what's in your ethers, what's in your astral body. Tonight, I'm happy to launch a GoFundMe campaign called Put Jesse in a Pyramid and send him to Egypt to go on a research and writing expedition. And it's going to cost a fair bit. I calculate I'm going to be going on a tour in September, which, yeah, just to give you some of the numbers to look at the reality of this, the tour is $6,500 US. And if you want a private room, which might not be a bad idea, I don't know if I want to sleep with a stranger for the 2 weeks, that's another $1,000 US. And then there's the flight there and back. So it's racking in around $10,000 Canadian. And then there's another expedition that's taking place in November, which I learned about through Rachel here, who's in the Zoom room, and she's part of the class. Might even be part of the tour too, hopefully. Being conducted by somebody who's very connected to Steiner's work, and he's led expeditions to Egypt before, considers himself an Egyptologist, and I visited his home in December, which is kind of a museum of Egyptology. So he's got his tour in November. So I'm hoping to just stay in Egypt for the month of October, researching and writing. So it's going to cost a fair bit, especially taking time away from work and also time to write and maybe hopefully find a publisher of some kind. So my GoFundMe campaign, I'm putting as the goal $30,000, which I know sounds like a lot, but I think this is really important. So I'm asking for what I feel I need. And to wind this down, for those of you in the class, to help with to kickstart this campaign, there's tuition for the class. Instead of tuition to me, I ask you to put the tuition into the GoFundMe campaign. What's that?
Jesse in a pyramid.
Jesse in a pyramid. Thank you. Somebody drew. Can I see that? All right. Everybody can. Building the vision for this campaign. Jesse in a pyramid. It almost looks like I'm the Sphinx, the great Sphinx.
Well, you were asking the question.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was asking the question. I will post the link to the GoFundMe campaign. I haven't quite finished it yet. I haven't published it yet, but it's coming in the next couple of days. There's just been a lot to get this together here, but I'm really thankful for beautiful circle of people here tonight. I feel your support, even if you're not able to contribute financially. I feel the spiritual support, which is great. Giving is great. It is more blessed to give than receive, and we need to be giving to each other. That creates the flow, the heart flow. That's what's going to raise the vibration on this planet. It doesn't take everybody on the planet to participate, but the more of us that can connect vibrationally to the vibration of love, that's really what's going to turn the tide of darkness and bring in the new age of light. Oh, one more before we close. One more exercise here. Get your paper, your pencils, and draw a square that has indents. This is the icing on the cake. So the square, but with indented sides, so it's in effect an 8-sided polygon. And feel the quality of that. Now draw a square that has the 4 indents and do a squaring, a squaring of the circle with that. So again, similar to the Great Giza Pyramid. Yeah, it'll look a little bit like a star. So you start off with something like that, and then the squaring of the circle. So similar to the Great Giza Pyramid, you've got something happening like that. So for your field work, you're going to do some of those, but then the crowning glory of that is to draw a spiral within that. So you can go from the circumference to the center, or the center to the circumference. Matter of fact, you should do 5 or 10 of these to really feel into it and entrain it into your subtle nature, which brings an organizing effect to your subtle bodies, your koshas. And the more you can do to enhance your subtle energies, the more of a fighting chance you have to embody consciousness. And in particular, the higher cosmic consciousness. So I know it looks like a finished static image, but it's the doing of it. It's the doing of it that I want you to do. The feel of it. You can spiral from the center out, or you can spiral from the out into the center. And see, this is what the Egyptians were up to. This is what they were doing with their pendulums. And this is how they initiated their leadership to produce a civilization that had incredible longevity and pinnacles of accomplishment, notwithstanding mummifying over 1 million cats. So, class people, your field work is to work with the sacred geometry, all of the stuff we did tonight. And what makes it sacred, by the way? What makes sacred geometry sacred? You do. You make it sacred by the attitude you bring to it. Do it with sacred attitude and make it sacred geometry. The other thing is to bring your pendulum to class next week. Want everybody to bring a pendulum to class each week. And during this week, you can be spinning it clockwise, counterclockwise, again, to entrain the sense of spiraling into your subtle body. General announcements for everybody. As I said, this is going to be a monthly series. So the next one's going to be February 9th, then March 9th, then April 6th, and then lastly, May 11th. On that note, let us close with the golden bowl. I'll do 1 ring for each side of the pyramid, which is
8.
Glad you got that right.